So I just want to take a moment or so to clear up some of the conflicting accounts and information that's been out there regarding actions that were taken to secure the release of 5 Americans who have been wrongfully detained in Iran. These Americans have been suffering a terrible ordeal. I think you all know that. Many of them were held in the Avon prison under ghastly conditions, and that we have been working very, very hard to bring them home to their families just as soon as possible. Now, to secure their freedom, the United States is pursuing an arrangement in which Iranian funds held in South Korea are moved to restricted accounts in Qatar, where they would be available for humanitarian transactions only. Things like food, medicine, medical supplies, medical equipment, agricultural products. These funds will now be subject to more legal restrictions than they were when they were in Korea. They will be monitored by rigorous due diligence standards required by the U.S. Treasury Department. And the U.S. will have visibility and will be able to engage in oversight about where the money was going and for what purpose. If Iran tries to divert the funds, we'll take action and we'll lock them up again. I also want to be clear. This is not a payment of any kind. It's not ransom. These aren't U.S. taxpayer dollars. And we haven't lifted a single one of our sanctions on Iran. Iran will be getting no sanctions relief. We will continue to counter the Iran regime's human rights abuses. We'll continue to counter their destabilizing actions abroad, its support for terrorism, its attack on maritime shipping in the Gulf, and its continued support for Russia's war against Ukraine. As you've heard us say before, when we're trying to bring Americans home, we often aren't dealing on a level playing field. We have to use the leverage we have to bring them home. They aren't going to be released for nothing in exchange. But I don't think we should lose sight of the bottom line here, and that's that we're working to free these innocent Americans who did nothing wrong, had no reason to be detained, bring them home to their families, bring them home whole and safe again. That's the goal. With that, take some questions.
Admiral Kirby, thank you for being here. I know that you dispute that this is a ransom payment. Obviously, many critics of this agreement say that it is just that. So, in effect, they suggest it's $1 billion per American individual being released. So how is this not incentivizing bad actors and rogue regimes like Iran in the future to detain more Americans?
Bad actors like Iran and like Mr. Putin in Russia don't need any incentive to continue to look for ways to wrongfully detain Americans. It's been happening a long, long time, and we have to accept the reality that it could happen again in the future. It's one of the reasons why the State Department has a new designation for countries, a D designation, so that before you travel or you do business in a foreign country, you ought to look and see, is the risk of detention, wrongful detention, high in that country before you go? We continue to advise Americans not to travel to Iran and to Russia and other places like that. But these bad actors don't need incentives, and this isn't gonna change the calculus necessarily of what they've been doing. What it is gonna do is get our Americans home. And that's what we're focused on.
But for clarity, why isn't it a ransom payment? I get that it's not American taxpayer dollars, but it's still $5 billion that had been frozen that was not available for use in any form by the Iranians. That $5 billion may be for humanitarian aid, but then it frees up $5 billion elsewhere to spend. So how is that not ransom payment?
Yeah, so a couple of points here. First of all, you're right, it's not U.S. money, it's Iranian money. It's Iranian money that had been established in these accounts to allow some trade from foreign countries on things like Iranian oil, to allow the Iranian oil to stay on market. And for countries who wanted to buy that Iranian oil, now these transactions largely were conducted in the previous administration, all legal, all fine, but to allow some of our allies and partners to be able to continue to purchase Iranian oil without being sanctioned for doing so. Several accounts were set up in several countries, South Korea being one of them, for many reasons, lots of different reasons. This particular account was not accessible to the Iranians as others were. So it is Iranian money. That's point number one. Point number two, it's not a blank check. They don't get to spend it any way they want. It's not $6 billion all at once. They will have to make a request for withdrawals for humanitarian purposes only, and there will be sufficient oversight to make sure that the request is valid and that it's going through vendors who we and the Qataris can trust will actually contract for the goods, the medical equipment, the food, whatever it is, in an appropriate way and get it directly to the Iranian people. The Iranian people will be the beneficiaries of these funds, not the regime. The regime doesn't get to touch the money, Peter. Doesn't go to them. They don't get to decide ultimate destination, and they have no direct access to it. Now, to your second part of your question, well, won't this just free up funds for them to continue to do bad behavior? They've been participating in bad behavior for a long, long time, and we continue to put pressure on them in ways, I would add, that the previous administration did not do, particularly in terms of their nuclear and ballistic missile programs. They're still supporting terrorists. They're still attacking shipping, and they're still supplying drones and drone manufacturing capability to the Russians. And for all of those things, we have and we will continue to hold them accountable. We've not only added sanctions to them for the way they've treated protesters, for the arms sales that they've provided to Russia, but we have increased our military presence in the Gulf region, specifically to address the attacks on maritime shipping. So Iran has choices to make. They've had choices to make in the past. They've got choices to make in the future. And if they continue to choose to conduct these kinds of destabilizing activities, we will continue to use all the levers at our power, economic and military, to counter that and to thwart their efforts.